Going.
Good, thanks, Dave. How are you?
I'm really, really well. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat to us today.
That's okay.
So, mate, I sat down and watched this documentary yesterday, and I absolutely loved it. So, congratulations on such a fantastic doco.
Thank you.
So, I'm probably one of those people that knows Lee's music, but I haven't been like an ultra fan over the years, and I learnt so much from this documentary. So, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about where the idea first started about doing a documentary about Lee and his music.
Well, I just finished making a documentary with my producers, Chris Brown and Deanna Delane, about Slim Dusty, Slim and I, about Joy McKean and Slim's life. And they were talking to me about doing another music documentary project, and the name Lee Kernaghan came up. And Chris and Dee said that they'd been having conversations with Lee's management about making a film. And they asked me what my thoughts were, and I was like you, I went, well, I don't really know Lee's stuff. I mean, I know of him, but I don't really know his work. But I obviously immediately knew some of his key songs, and I went, oh, that's interesting that I know him and some of the songs. And I thought, I've always sort of had in the back of my mind, I've always wanted to do a concert film. I've always wanted to make I've been a big fan of films like The Last Waltz and Stop Making Sense, and I've always wanted to try and do something like that. And it suddenly dawned on me, well, maybe this was the opportunity I've been looking for. And as it turned out, it was a great kind of combination of ideas and of subject, and that I pitched my idea saying, listen, I've got this idea, we could do a performance and have Lee perform his songs, and he could tell stories about the songs and the inspiration behind the songs in between the songs. And it could be kind of two films, a documentary and a concert film sort of interwoven together. And I pitched it to Lee and his management, and they loved the idea because Lee said, look, I'm really not, don't want to have a film made about me. I'd much rather make a film about the things that inspire me. So it was just a great kind of confluence of subject material and an idea and a form. So it came together very quickly from that point.
So, as a director, when you don't really know the work of the artist that you're about to make a film on, what do you do? Do you sit down and listen to their back catalogue from start to finish? Do you start to read up about the artist? What was your first step from when you first had the idea?
Yeah, well, it was lucky. It was so funny. I was going, God, it'd be really good if Lee had a book. That would be a really great in for me. And Lee said, yeah, well, I've written one. So there was a biography. So I went, oh, fuck, great, okay, perfect. And yeah, and I love Spotify. So I went to Spotify, and you just start listening, and I call it like it's my sort of deep immersion period where I just sort of drive around and I listen to music, and I sit down and I read the book, and very quickly wrote a script based on we picked 14 songs and started to weave in stories in between those songs. So it was as I said, sort of you surround yourself in the material, and what I like about that is that when you're coming at it fresh, you have an objectivity, so everything's new and everything's interesting. And therefore, I think you have a more unique viewpoint, and a kind of a clearer point of view of how to approach stuff. So it was sort of an interesting process of discovery for me.
That was actually going to be my next question. Someone said to me once that when they do a documentary, they actually like to do a documentary on a topic that they don't know much about, because then they're discovering things as the audience is discovering it. What was the one thing that you discovered about Lee that really, really surprised you?
I think the thing that really struck me was how was the various communities and the sort of the depth and breadth of how far his music and his stories have been influenced and inspired by the country, and how far-ranging his music is and loved. I think that's the thing that really surprised me, and especially, this whole idea of Ute culture and of Ute rock, which is a genre that I actually think Lee invented, and the Denny Ute muster and this whole subculture of people in their cars and their Utes. I just realized, oh my God, this is an entire world that I didn't know existed. and that Lee sort of had put a soundtrack to. So that was probably my most interesting discovery, is just these sort of substrata levels of rural Australia that I didn't realise were there.
It sounds like there could be a Kriv Stenders film in that, set at the Denny Ute Muster or something.
Well, there was a film made, wasn't there? Tim Ferguson made a film called Spin Out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that one's been covered, but maybe there might be another mind to seam there. Yeah.
What was Lee like the first time that you sat down to talk to him? Because he comes across as someone that's almost like the boy next door. So what was he like when you sat down to first meet with him?
He was very, very down to earth. He was very much like, as you said, he was just what I kind of, in a weird sort of, because I read the book and and sort of listened to the songs. He's just a very direct guy, but very hard on himself. Very sets a very high standard for himself and for the people around who work around him. So I knew that he had a he had a very strong bullshit detector on, so he knew that he wanted to make sure that we were going to do it properly, that we were going to do everything the right way as opposed to sort of the cheap or the fast way. So it was really, you could see that he has a lot of integrity, and he obviously has a brand that he needs to protect, and he's very conscious of that brand. And as I said to him, when he said, "Look, I really don't want the film to be about me. I'm actually not that interesting." He said that, and I thought that was quite that sort of endeared me to him, because I realised, he really does believe in his music, and he believes in what his music is about, which is about rural Australia and rural people.
What was that journey like for you, going through and learning more about his music, but learning about the stories behind the music? I mean, I had no idea that Lee was from the high country. I always just imagined that Lee was from somewhere like Tamworth or out the back of Burke. What was that like for you, going on that journey and discovering the stories behind his songs?
Well, it's fascinating. What I love about my job is that, especially in documentary, is what we were saying before, you're always learning and you're always uncovering things, and you're sort of an explorer. Like, rather than in a boat or, with a rope and some shackles, you've got a camera. So you're using your camera as a way to kind of shine a light on things and see things from a different perspective. And I guess for me, what was amazing was realizing that Lee has been doing this for 30 years.
Yep.
He's been touring this country, building an audience base for 30 years, and that's generational, that base. And that's quite a remarkable thing. And the only other person or people who've done that before are people like Slim Dusty and Joy McKean. So he's very much following in their footsteps. And it's a tradition, and it's a lifestyle, and it's a noble form of work. And that's the thing I think I really appreciated, was that, they're not necessarily, on the internet or on the top 10 in everyone's foreground, but they are doing this hard, constant work year after year, decade after decade, kilometre after kilometre, town after town, playing to these audiences and building this incredible base of a community.
Having such a loyal fan base, though, does that also put pressure on you as a filmmaker, where you're almost at that point where you're like, I've got to get this right because these fans are so loyal to him?
Yeah, there's a certain responsibility, but at the same time, because coming in as a sort of, again, coming back to that first question, that first topic we were talking about, coming at it as a sort of an uninterested party or uninvested, you can kind of have an objectivity that you normally wouldn't have if you were a fan. So I was able to sort of put everything into sort of a bit more, relief or perspective, and be an observer. Yeah. And I think that's a good place to be, to sort of, a lot of the time you'll sort of see in the film, we went to these communities, we filmed Lee interacting with people, and it was great to just be witness to that, and then obviously given the chance to go through his exhaustive archive and see that, that this is something that he's been doing for decades.
There's a great crossover with your last film too, Slim and I, where Lee tells the story about sitting next to Slim on the Ansett flight. I love that story. Was there a favourite story that you had that Lee told you of all of his tracks?
There's probably the one I always get a laugh at is the one where they talk about where it's sort of mentioned in the film as well when he's with James Blundell and they're talking about the writing of Gunda Windy Moon, which was written on a god awful hangover. But I was told the inside story about how that hangover happened, and it's probably not fit in print. So I'll have to keep that one to myself. But that was a wild night those two boys had in Nashville or wherever it was where they wrote that song. So, yeah.
Mate, you always have such a naturalistic feel to your films. I've noticed it even going right back to your early films. And in this film, the concert footage, it almost makes you feel like you're there in the room witnessing the concert. How did you get that effect, and how did you go about approaching filming a concert? Because you seem to have done it in a way that most filmmakers haven't done it previously.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you sort of picked up on that. Yeah, we sort of look. I wanted to just to me, Lee, his music, his audience. There's no bullshit. You know what I mean? It is what it is. They're just folk who love a good night, who love a good time, who love a drink, who love just some foot stomping music. And I thought, look, I'm not going to put any bells and whistles on this. I'm just going to shoot this just as naturally and as directly as I can. And, you're as good as what your material gives you. So they were a great audience. And I just put the camera amongst them and we just picked out the people that were, I got the cameras to just lock onto characters and onto people who were really enjoying being there. And in the edit, we really sort of accentuated that and isolated those characters and made them constant throughout the film. And I always wanted to keep cutting to being inside the audience. That was something that we deliberately designed with the coverage to make it sort of an immersive experience, like you were there on the night. Because there was such a great vibe that night that the cameras captured, and that's part of the I think the challenge and the sort of the exercise is to not only shoot the concert but to also capture the atmosphere of the night. And I think we tried that, and I think we pulled that off, which I'm very happy about.
Now that you've had a chance to know more about Lee and his music, do you have a favourite track of Lee Kernaghan's now?
Gosh, yeah. I kind of like Texas 4385. That's sort of grown on me.
Yeah.
I really enjoy She's My Ute for some bizarre reason. I really love that song. And the way it is, they're just, to me, they're just great. Every time I hear them, I listen to them through to the end. They just sort of, they grab on, they hook themselves into me, and I just love kind of stomping along with them.
Definitely. Look, I had his music on the way to work this morning. Once I watched the doco yesterday, I've been going down and going through his discography, and it's an absolutely amazing back catalogue. And Kriv, I know we're running out of time very, very quickly, so to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are thinking about heading along and checking out this great documentary?
Well, come along for a great night out. It's an event. It's a big, loud, fun, epic movie. You're not only going to see a concert film, you're also going to see Australia in a way that I think is going to kind of take your breath away. So it's an all-round, all-inclusive great night out.
Definitely.